breaking connections to the world. Empowering language on humanity. Let's bring the world of learning in one channel. Welcome to Visitors Revelations English TV.
Hello everyone, I am Teacher Marlene and I am your English 8 teacher for today. In this time of pandemic, varied situations are observed and a lot of people find it difficult to know whether these issues are true or not. One of the reasons behind it might be the biases embedded in the issues. Join me as we figure out biases made by the author. Are you ready? Our today's lesson, author's biases. But before we proceed to our lesson proper, let's take a look at this picture. Then tell me something about it. Let's get started. Okay, what can you see in the illustration? It's a lawyer's balance and figuratively, it signifies equality between or among issues without biases. In fact, a bias is when a writer or speaker uses a selection of facts, choice of words, and the quality and tone of description to convey a particular feeling or attitude. Its purpose is to convey a certain attitude or point of view toward a subject. By the way, what is an author's bias? A bias is basically when an author is unfair or inaccurate in his or her presentation of something. In their attempt to persuade, authors often make mistakes in their thinking patterns and writing choices. This is because every author has a point of view. Every author holds opinion that affects his or her discussion of an issue. Opinions that you, as a reader, must try to recognize or understand. Such judgment show an author's biases or preference for one side of one issue over another. So, how can we spot bias or biases? First, we have word choice and connotation. Connotation is a further understanding of the word's meaning. As well as a literal meaning, there is also a word that carry an additional idea or feeling. As a writer, you can influence your readers' opinions with the words you choose. The connotations of your chosen words determine whether your text is biased or unbiased. For example, your friends describe you as forceful. Is forceful the right word? Perhaps assertive, which has a more positive connotation, would be more accurate. Next, we have names and titles. The way a person is described and labeled can influence how we think about him or her. Let's take, for example, John Doe, an ex-con, is now running for an office. John Doe, who was convicted 20 years ago for a minor offense, is now running for office. Third, we have placement and size. Usually, stories in newspaper or a news program that are chosen to be put first are seen as the most important stories. Stories that appear at the back of the newspaper or at the end of the broadcast are seen as less important. Example: if a story about disaster in the Philippines is on the front page of the newspaper, it will be seen as important. If the story about the typhoon in the Philippines is buried at the back of the paper, it will be regarded as less important. Fourth, we have selection or omission. Sometimes, certain details or facts will be cut out of a story, and others will be included. This can change how readers or viewers think about the story. Make sure to consider multiple sources to get the full story. For example, A news story could be written about people booing during speech. The president's remarks were greeted by loud cheers. A small handful of people disagreed with the president's remarks. Lastly, we have images and videos. Some photos can make the subject look serious, beautiful, healthy, and so on. Other photos, however, can be very unflattering and make the subject look ridiculous, sick, etc. The image of someone in the news can influence how people think about him or her. For example, okay, to check your understanding on today's lesson, let's have these following activities. Activity 1. Identify the author's biases being described in the following pictures. Choose the letter of your correct answer from the given items below. A. Word choice and connotation. B. Names and titles. C. Placement and size. D. Selection or omission. And E. Images and videos. Let's have number 1. Picture number 2. Picture number 3. Picture 4. And picture 5. Now, let's move on with activity 2, multiple choice. Identify the way on how to spot bias from the following items. Choose the letter of the correct answer. We have the choices: A. Names and titles. B. Placement and size. C. Selection or omission. And D. Word choice and connotation. Number 2. Brianna's research proposal is unusual. Is it A. Names and titles. B. Placement and size. C. Selection or omission. Or D. Word choice and connotation. Let's have item number 3. Manny Pacquiao, known as the People's Champ, had won many boxing competitions. Is it A. Names and titles. B. Placement and size. C. Selection or omission. Or D. Word choice and connotation. Item number 4. Is it A. Names and titles. B. Placement and size. C. Selection or omission. Or D. Word choice and connotation. Number 5. Take a look at the picture. A. Images and videos. B. Placement and size. C. Selection or omission. Or D. Word choice and connotation. Okay, to wrap it up, a bias is basically when an author is unfair or inaccurate in his or her presentation of something. We should also remember some ways on how to spot biases. So first, we have word choice and connotation. Second, we have names and titles. Third, placement and size. Fourth, selection or omission. And lastly, we have images and videos. And yes, we're almost done with our today's lesson. And in this time of pandemic, we can hear different kinds of news. And for your last activity, find the author's biases on the news you have heard. Write them in a sheet of paper. How do you cope with the news you have heard? Explain how you deal with the situation using the following. For singers, compose a song. For actors, you can create a short play. And for writers, write a short poem. And please do not forget to include your faith in God in your answer. Remember, class, you only have to choose one of these activities. And for you to be guided in this activity, here is the rubric. Okay, we're done with our today's lesson. But let me just end this lesson with a quotation by Charles Curtis. Bias and prejudice are attitudes to be kept in hand, not attitudes be avoided. See you next time as we learn another lesson in English. Bye!